I'm Emily Turner, and I'm joined today by Dr. Jamil Zaki. He's a professor of psychology and a researcher also at Stanford, and he's just come out with his book. It's called The War for Kindness. And Dr. Zaki, it's really interesting. In some ways, you say there's not enough empathy in the world, and then relating this crisis to climate change. Is it that bad?
I mean, I think that a lack of empathy is underlying a lot of problems that we're facing now, including sort of extremism and polarization in our political space, stress and anxiety among the, young people, and also climate change. I mean, in a way, addressing climate change is about being able to envision the generations that will be impacted by it and empathize with our descendants and trying to be the ancestors that they deserve.
And so, I mean, is it such a significant lack in society? I mean, has it gone where all of a sudden people were nice and they empathized with each other, but now, I mean, how bad is it?
There was a study that came out about 8 years ago that found that the average American in 2009 was less empathic than 75% of Americans in 1979.
Oh, wow.
So that's a pretty big drop in 30 years.
Yeah, no, interesting. Do you have any idea what you can attribute that to?
It's hard to say because, a correlation is not the same as saying that one thing caused another.
Right.
But some things that occurred over that time include the rise of online technology, which a lot of people think might be at the root of this issue.
That's so interesting, the irony of that, right? It's because you see all these posts and it's, this is a GoFundMe and here's this sob story that, maybe, and I don't mean that in a derogative way,
Sure.
And then people can empathize with that or sympathize with that, and then you have an emotional response, but in the same way, it can create distance between people.
Yeah, the way that I talk about it sometimes is that the internet allows us to connect with everybody, but at the same time, sometimes makes it more difficult to connect with anybody, right? It turns out there's a fascinating study that found that just putting a smartphone between two strangers as they have their first conversation decreases their later trust and empathy for one another.
Really?
It's like just having a reminder of the internet in our pocket might be damaging our ability to connect with the people right in front of us.
That's really scary for younger generations, especially who've never not had a cell phone. And so the research that you've done in this book, what's kind of the crux of all of this?
Well, I guess I would argue that it's getting harder to empathize with people for a variety of reasons, including but not only online technology, but importantly, that we can fight back against those trends. Because empathy is not just a trait, it's a skill that we can build over time through the right choices and habits.
Okay, so I'll bite on this one. How do you do that? You almost have to make a conscious decision to say, I'm going to be kind today, which it's sad, but how do you do that?
Well, there are lots of ways to practice kindness. So there are techniques from Buddhism, for instance, like loving kindness meditation, that over time, researchers have found once you practice those, not only do people become more empathic, but the parts of their brain associated with empathy actually grow through that meditation practice.
And you really put this to practice with the class. An empathy class, right?
Yeah, so this year I taught a brand new seminar at Stanford called Becoming Kinder. And again, it had its root, the idea that kindness is a skill that we can build. And I said, let's put those principles into practice. So we got together a very small group of students and we learned about the science of empathy, but then each week I gave them a kindness challenge. Sort of assignment to push themselves past their normal social boundaries and connect with people in new ways.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so then you take this group of, teenagers, right, or young adults. Did it work?
I think so. So some of the challenges, one that a lot of the students really connected with was disagreeing better. So we were to find someone who we disagreed with, but instead of just yelling at each other about our opinions, we were supposed to find out how that person came to have their view in the first place. Get to know each other as people rather than judging each other immediately.
So here's what's going to happen. We're going to send a copy of your book to everybody on Capitol Hill and see how everything goes in the future. In the meantime, if you'd like a copy of the book and you want to read it, it is The War for Kindness by Dr. Jamil Zaki. You can check it out and learn all about being kind because we can all use a little bit of that.